Ванкум приветствует вас. Сегодняшняя тема.
Spain and Morocco do not have good relations. Morocco considers some territories to be occupied by Spain, the same territories that Spain regards as part of sovereign Spanish soil. If it ever came to war between the two countries, what would that war look like? Both have modern militaries, yet one side is somewhat stronger. But how would geography influence the outcome of the war? Watch to find out. Salutations, and thanks to World of Warships game for sponsoring this video. I played it and it made me a bit nostalgic for World War II naval warfare. No standoff nonsense, wanna get up close and personal, get a destroyer and rush ahead. Torpedoes ahoy, you want long-range strikes, get a carrier and send out bombers. Though lately I grew a soft spot for just pummeling the crap out of the enemy ships with big guns. Why can't we have battleships today? World of Warships lets you try all those, it's free and available for PC. You get to play with over 400 historical ships. The maps are gorgeous, there are even dynamic weather changes. It gets pretty realistic, and playing against real people means I have to change and adjust tactics all the time. World of Warships is a team-based game, and I really love it when I can get a few friends in my division. So why don't you try it out? It's free, just click the link at the top of the video description. If you register into the game through that link, you'll get a huge starter pack. Just use the code BOOM and you'll get 200 doubloons, 2 ships, 20 Restless fire camouflage items, 2.5 million credits and 7 days of premium account. Whew, that's a lot of stuff. Just try it out, sink some suckers. Onto our video. Morocco is a large country, with a population 1/4 smaller than Spain's. Economy-wise, Spain is quite a bit ahead though, so a bigger sum of money invested into the Spanish military is not that strange. Still, due to different wage costs and Morocco getting some military aid from the Gulf states, the actual strength of the two sides' militaries is in certain regards not that different. When it comes to the army numbers, Morocco is ahead of Spain, well over 2 times ahead in the number of ground troops. While the Spanish army is professional, the better part of Moroccan army is made up of conscripts, serving 12 months. Organized army reserves are also far bigger in Morocco. While it's likely those reservists get little to no training, due to the sheer size of the Moroccan active army force, the average reservist is still fairly fresh from the military. Both sides have quite big paramilitary forces, but since most of the fighting would be over the sea and over fairly small pieces of land, there would be little use for such untrained units like the paramilitary formations. Indeed, the war would not likely be decided by the size of the armies. Rather, the capabilities of the two sides' air forces, navies and, to some extent, the number of troops deployed overseas would be decisive. The Spanish Navy, for example, is quite a bit bigger and has toys that are simply unavailable to the Moroccan side. Spain operates 2 submarines. Morocco lacks such vessels, and its airborne anti-submarine assets are quite limited. Spain has a small aircraft carrier operating Harrier jump jets, though in this war it's likely the ship would operate more as an assault ship, since the distances involved would be enough for land-based planes to go anywhere needed. Finally, the Spanish surface combatant fleet is bigger, especially when tonnage is compared, as the Moroccan Navy relies more on smaller ships, more for immediate defense of their coast, while the Spanish ships are bigger so they can project their power farther from their mainland. Both sides also operate a bunch of patrol vessels armed with guns only, which would be of no real use in a modern war. The list shown includes only the bigger patrol ships. But would Morocco be outclassed? That very much depends on where the fights would happen, and the locations of Spanish territories happen to be very close to Morocco. Let's take a look. That's a lot of territories for Spain to defend. While the Canary Islands are not really disputed by Morocco, their sheer proximity and significance to Spain would mean they too would likely see some form of attacks. The Balearic Islands to the northeast would not likely see much fighting though, as Morocco would be risking too much by trying to reach them either by air or by sea. The Canary Islands are much closer, and worse for Spain, they're farther away from the Spanish mainland. so supplying them would mean either using a route quite close to Morocco or using an even longer roundabout route. As usual in Binko videos, we assume no third-party interference, no allies, and the same starting morale. The first to be hit in the war would definitely be the 3 Spanish exclaves on the Moroccan coast. Peñón de Vélez de la Gomera would fall first, as it's basically just several buildings on a rock. Its only population is a very small Spanish army detachment that would quickly find itself outnumbered and perhaps even shelled into oblivion. Ceuta and Melilla exclaves are much bigger. Combined, they're home to over 160,000 people, and thus significant Spanish army detachments are permanently based there. Each has a brigade-sized unit, including tanks and other armored vehicles. Of the 3, Ceuta has the biggest territory for some added depth for its defenders, and is on a peninsula, limiting the Moroccan attack routes. The fact that the Spanish mainland is a mere dozen miles away would also help the defenders. The Spanish Air Force would have an easier time providing fire support. The Spanish army would have it easier bringing in reinforcements, and even Spanish artillery would be in range, shelling Moroccan forces attacking Ceuta across the Gibraltar Strait. The other 2 exclaves, being 100 miles away from Spain, would not enjoy such help from the Spanish forces. Other Spanish territories, like the tiny islands, would be in similar predicaments, fairly far away from Spain. On the one hand, they would initially enjoy some protection since there's sea to overcome. But on the other hand, they have little to no Spanish military presence, and their infrastructure is lacking for housing a big defensive force. Most of those islands hardly have houses and are between a few hundred meters and a few kilometers away from the Moroccan shore. The exception being the Alboran island, which might be quite hard to take for Morocco, since it's almost in the middle of the sea. It already has a small port and a heliport, making it easier to resupply for the Spanish. Controlling the seas would in large part be made possible by controlling the skies first, and the Spanish air forces are quite a bit stronger. The Spanish have almost 3 times as many planes, and they're generally more potent. Typhoons would likely outmatch even the modern F-16s Morocco has. Moroccan Mirages have been thoroughly modernized, sporting radar and weapons that a Mirage 2000-5 would usually use, but they would still struggle against Spanish planes, except perhaps the few unmodernized F-18s. Both sides might even use their trainers in some attack missions, but those would be range constrained, and if they would meet air defenses, they would be more or less helpless. Speaking of air defenses, Spain has more potent ones. Basically, it's evident that the Air Force is the area where Spain spent most of its defense budget, unlike Morocco, which focused on the ground forces. Morocco is in the process of getting long-range SAMs like the Patriot. Until then, their most potent system is the recent Chinese-sourced Sky Dragon. Spanish SAMs are generally of longer reach and are more modern. There's a bunch of other stuff Morocco is procuring, like AWACS planes and Reaper drones, but those have not yet been delivered. Naval-based SAMs could also help, but with the Spanish Navy threat, that might mean the Moroccan Navy would be tied to its shores. If it tried venturing out of the air defense umbrella and Air Force's protection, it might find itself sunk quickly, either by Spanish submarines or Spanish air forces. So what do all those numbers of planes and SAM systems mean? The Spanish are clearly ahead, and they might even enjoy some freedom while bombing various targets in Morocco itself. But they are still likely to be regularly intercepted by the Moroccan air forces when Morocco sees an opportunity. Spain could mount strike packages with 100 planes virtually impenetrable to Moroccan fighters, but that would also mean Spain would be almost left without planes for the next several hours in all other areas of the pretty big battlefield. Mind you, there's over 1,500 miles between edges of the Canary and Balearic Islands. Such doctrine might result in Morocco dispersing their forces and simply chip away at Spanish ground targets at a slow pace. If Spain tried to protect most of its land targets at once, it would not have enough fighters left to mount big-scale attacks into Morocco, ones in which they would be sure they have more fighters than Morocco. Coupled with the Moroccan air defenses, such limited strikes might mean Spain would lose just as many planes as Morocco. In the long term, that exchange ratio would still be horrendous for Morocco. After both sides would lose 50 or so planes, Morocco would be left with next to nothing, while Spain would be operating 100 or so decent fighter jets. And once the Air Force threat is gone, Spain would be able to protect all the fairly distant islands like the Canaries. As any Moroccan ship or plane trying to either bring in troops or supplies would be easily stopped. The only islands that would likely still fall are the tiny ones very close to Morocco. There, timely interceptions of quick helicopter incursions would not be possible, nor could small boat assaults be detected and stopped in time. The distances involved are just too minuscule. Indeed, it's likely Spain would not even try to defend most of those, so many of those small islands would simply fall to Morocco in the opening days of the war. Large concentrations of Spanish citizens, like in Melilla and Ceuta, would have to be defended with much more vigor. But the truth is, those are land masses connected to Morocco itself. No matter how many troops Spain manages to bring in to reinforce them, it might not be enough. And bringing in troops and supplies in a war is bound to result in some of the ships and aircraft being lost in the process. Ceuta lacks an airport, but even Melilla, with one, is not likely to be able to use it, as it would be constantly shelled by Moroccan artillery. Helicopters would have a very hard time operating as well, both due to artillery and the fact Moroccan air defenses would be near the front line, literally miles away. That of course means Morocco's own units would be equally close to the front lines. Their SAMs, artillery and tanks would find themselves under the Spanish barrage. Spain might even turn the Albaran island into a helicopter base, operating attack helicopters from it to support Melilla. When it comes to ground equipment, Morocco is quite a bit ahead, just as it was in overall ground army troops. Its tank inventory is a mishmash of US, European, Chinese and Russian gear. When it comes to various recon, assault, infantry fighting vehicles and such, the figures are more even, but it's worth remembering that Spain would not really be able to bring in most of their heavy vehicles during the war. And when it comes to artillery, Spain would again be outnumbered by a fair margin. The fact a lot of Moroccan artillery is self-propelled would help them not get destroyed by Spanish airstrikes quickly. Towed guns, with their longer redeployment times, would fare worse there. Again, Spanish guns would not likely even see much action. And Moroccan multiple rocket launchers, especially the very long-range Chinese-sourced ones, could be quite hard to track for the Spanish, firing from safe distances. Even the Spanish artillery firing from over the Gibraltar Strait might find itself under constant harassment. The fairly dense urban setting of both Ceuta and Melilla would mean a lot of casualties for the attacker, but at the same time it would also suit Morocco as it slowly manages to take more and more of those cities. Spanish air power would not be able to do much tracking targets from the air in urban rubble. Eventually, both Ceuta and Melilla would fall. Spain would find itself losing all of its possessions near Morocco, for good. It would still very easily cling onto the Canaries though, as any Moroccan attempt to land there would be fairly meager in size. Morocco simply lacks the hardware to transport a lot of troops at once. Even its air mobility fleet is too small for such operations. Most helicopters would not really have the range to fly to even the closest Canary Island and back. Morocco has on paper 2 brigades worth of paradrop trained units, but most planes carrying them would not really even reach the Canaries. And supporting any landed force needs continuous flights. Very soon, Morocco would be out of transport planes, as Spain intercepts them. So even if Morocco does manage to land some troops on any of the Canary Islands, it would be a temporary victory. Those forces would eventually have to surrender. Spain always has a brigade worth of troops on the Canaries, but in this war it would likely increase those numbers a few-fold. Interestingly, Morocco has decent recon capabilities, with 2 optical recon satellites. Spain has 1 radar satellite of its own, plus partial ownership of European Helios optical satellites, 2 of which are in operation. Morocco also has more of the medium-sized recon drones, sourced from various countries. Tracking possible incursions on the other country's soil would be doable for both sides, so such invasions would not be even attempted. Spain would control the seas, not just due to its jet fighters clearing the way and due to its stronger navy, but also due to the much more numerous maritime patrol aircraft. The whole war would last several weeks at least, possibly a few months. Spain would lose some ships, but nothing compared to the losses of the Moroccan navy. Both sides might lose a similar number of planes, but that would still constitute disaster for Morocco. Morocco would also likely see a few times more military deaths on the ground than Spain, possibly numbering over 10,000. But overall losses when surrendered and captured Spanish troops are included might be roughly similar. Spain might also find itself unable to evacuate most of the over 160,000 civilians from Ceuta and Melilla, so it might not be in the position to dictate all the terms post-war if those civilians and troops are to return to Spain. Despite the heavy equipment losses, Morocco would definitely regard itself as the winner, and Spain, losing those overseas territories, would not be happy. And remember, Binkov may talk about hypothetical wars, but only real peace can bring us all together.